So you said you have someone who has the honor of being on the both sides of the coin, of a policeman and of a citizen. But I believe every policeman is a citizen, and this is something I have seen in my service, and it's a generalization that policemen tend to forget that they are also citizens, especially people who are higher ups in rank, in power, who are, who tend to think of themselves as an IPS officer, as a police officer, instead of as a citizen. Their core identity becomes that of a police officer, or maybe of a commissioner, or of a superintendent of police, or as a someone who handles the district, the law and order of the district. But I believe it's a common mistake to make, to forget your identity as a citizen. And it's a constant struggle to remind myself of that identity. And in my conversation with people who come and speak to me about their issues, they also keep reminding me, and I'm grateful to them for reminding me of my identity. So, before I begin my lecture on this, I'll put a disclaimer sort of thing, that since I'm in Indian Police Service, I really cannot speak against the state, and I should not, against the Indian government as such. I'm talking about that. So, so in case if you want to feel questions in terms of concepts of political theory, concepts such as state, concepts such as citizen, political party, opposition, your rights, and all of that. So instead of getting into specifics of a particular instance or a particular government, we should talk in a general manner, generalizing the whole situation, so that I can give you a better perspective. And in fact, I believe that is more helpful in a scenario where authoritarian governments are, ruling over you. So the best way to avoid conflict with that government is actually educate people and using such concepts. So in general, I believe in a democratic setup, the best way to push forward a dialogue is using, for instance, if I start using terms like BJP and Congress, people will either term me as a bug or a Congress, or a Congi. So that label can be easily put on you if you are if you are basically siding with one party or another, or if you are giving an example where you seem to be, where you can perceive to be siding with one party or another. So that's a very basic request. And second is, I'm usually more comfortable in a dialogue sort of setup instead of a lecture where the communication is one way. So if Ariba, you feel that people are putting forward questions which are worth fielding in the
Sure.
context of
I'll
things
keep
like,
that in mind. Sure.
please feel free to put forward questions. Okay. So
Sure.
let me begin it. So the real lecture. So the unrest, the protest, and the discontent that people have towards state. First of all, it's very normal. It's a normal thing to have. And just like in a software, you expect bugs to be there. Bugs are the things which help you evolve. In fact, the evolution which happened, where our DNA got replicated, got changed, and in turn, we also suffered from cancer. So cancers are sort of bugs which happen when DNAs do not replicate properly. So these sort of bugs are not something that should be despised. In fact, it should be looked into with a keener eye. And unrest are things which help us in pointing the deficiencies that a government has. In recent cases, you can see that the student protests were happening, and recently farmer protests are happening. In case of previous regime, uh, 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 protests were happening against the corruption. So unrest are not recent phenomena. Okay, so but what happens in the case of unrest is that police is the first phase of state that people come in touch with, especially when all the mechanisms fail. So we are on the front line in case of recently in the case of migrants issue. This is coming from a personal experience, and this is very politically neutral thing because it happened due to COVID. What happened was migrants got stuck and they wanted to go to their home, and the government had not allowed any movement. And slowly, when their resources were getting exhausted, their savings were getting depleted, they did not have food, they had to pay rent, and all of those things were happening. So migrants were getting restless, and when masses get restless, even we are aware of the fact that this is a government thing. The emergency has been declared by health department. The transportation is the responsibility of railway ministry, and to give them shelter, to provide them with facilities, it was the responsibility of revenue department, IAS, and the SDMs of the local area. But when they were not satisfied with the setup, they were not satisfied with the arrangement. What happened is they were the first one to come in conflict with us. So there were instances where riots happened, where there were clashes with police. In my case, fortunately, I was able to anticipate that these things will happen, and what I did was I visited the field. I had a conversation with them. I understood their plight. I understood the fact that they too want to go home, that their liberties were being curtailed, and they felt that it's unreasonable that they are not able to move while so many other people are being allowed to move, who had cars, who had passes. Basically, if you had some sort of resources for yourself, where you were privileged enough to have a car, have a bike, or so you were allowed to move, but they were not. So that was the problem that they were facing, and I had a proper conversation with them. I had a proper talk with them, and I was able to keep them calm for a long time. And such things can happen even when the blunders were from blunders, or you can say general mistakes that were happening were from other departments. We were the frontline people who were facing the ire of the police. So this is one thing. So why police comes in the front line? Because we are that arm of the state which is able to use force, which has the authority, not power, authority to use the force legitimately. But what sort of force shall we use? And how do you define legitimate use of force? So it has to be minimum use of force, it has to be justifiable, and third is it has to be non-lethal. So that's the use of force we are talking about. And it can be physical as well as it can be legal. Physical, I mean the typical law and order control situations and riot control situations where we basically do lathi charge and use tear gases. And legal are the one where we can, take legal actions against people, against the leaders of the a certain moment, and it can either be used to persecute them or suppress them, depending on the kind of state that is ruling over the nation. So this job of a citizen, of a police, is in sharp contrast with that of responsibility that is bestowed upon a citizen. So the relationship between the citizen and state has been defined by the social contract theory, which was by Rousseau. And social contract theory says that basically citizens let go of some of their powers, some of the liberties, or some of their freedoms, in exchange of having a state which will take care of their basic things such as food, shelter, clothing, employment. And slowly, as times are evolving, these responsibilities are also expanding. I believe right to internet, right to information, right to digital technology, and all of these things are becoming more and more basic as times are passing. Especially in the COVID era has only accelerated these phenomena. So citizen has to demand some basic rights and basic things from the state. And if they feel that they are not getting all of that, uh, their rights are not being respected, their liberties are not being respected, so they can definitely come and show their protest and show their discontent and organize and agitate against the state. That is completely fine. So as a citizen, the responsibility of citizen is to question state. Let me make that very clear. It is to question state. It is to hold them accountable, enforce accountability of them. It is to check misuse of authority. Rather, when the authority is being misused, it becomes power. Authority cannot, by definition, authority cannot be misused. When authority is misused, it becomes power. And elections are a way for a citizen to replace the state, especially the party which is ruling the state. So that is the basic responsibility that a citizen has, and these are the identities which you can see that which are being attacked by certain trolls, by certain IT cells of certain parties, uh, which are attacking them. Whenever people say that we are not happy with the state, so they will say ki, a state is for your own benefit, state is doing everything they can, and sometimes they assign a sort of paternalistic role where to the state, where state is supposed to take care of everything, and suppose state can interfere in everything. I don't believe that should be the case. State should always interfere as least as possible. This is basically the liberty shall not be curtailed. Of the freedom of thought, the ability to think freely, to express freely, all of these shall not be curtailed. And citizens should keep a watch on state to where state act starts to do that. So my belief is that citizen will stand against the state. By definition, he will stand against the state. Irony in this whole process is that when I was preparing for UPSC, I believe that when I did not clear till 2015, as you said, till 2015, I was preparing. I did give my attempts till then, and I did not clear. And it made me wonder, what did I get out of it? So the answer was that I became a good citizen. That was the answer. And when I did clear, I became part of the state. I became an arm of the state. So even though I am a good citizen, I like to believe I'm a good citizen, but I cannot express that identity very freely, and I'm so glad that I have a platform to do so. But in usual day-to-day routine, I do not get to express that quite freely. And so the first thing, even though a citizen does infiltrate that executive arm of the state, and there are four pillars: judiciary, executive, legislature, and media. So when I cleared UPSC, I became part of the executive branch of the state. I'm essentially co-opted by the state, and I'll have to work for that. And I have so this is a very this is, I feel this a bit ironical. So as a citizen, I would like to request you that just becoming part of the system will not be enough, and merely of one branch, that is of executive. We also have to, as good citizens, also have to join judiciary. They also have to join legislature. They also have to fight politics, and they also have to become a part of media. Uh, that's the thing. And so all these systems are as good as the people which are running them. So legislature it stands true for legislature, judiciary, executive, and the media. We all know how media is. Fake news is rampant, and it's no secret. So I'm not ashamed of saying it. But fake news is quite rampant. Misinformation is the new norm. And fortunately, there are many media houses which are coming up, which are trying to fill that vacuum using ethical journalism, and using facts instead of sensationalism to put forward across a point. And as a citizen, it's our responsibility not only to join them but also to promote them. Okay, so same is true for legislature and judiciary. Politics, they say, it's a dirty business, and most of us try to avoid it. But it's high time, I believe, that good citizens, they need to join politics, and they need to participate in it, and they need to understand. And politics is a different beast. You mentioned that I love stoicism as a philosophy, but even though I do follow Stoicism, I like to sprinkle a bit of Machiavelli into it. And that has made me realize that not every system is perfect, and as long as the system is being run by people, it will be as flawed as the people who are running it. So you cannot expect a system where there is zero corruption, there is no inefficiencies, no malafide intentions running it, no misuse of authority. If you expect to get that sort of system by agitation or anything, I think you're well intentioned. You are well intentioned, but with misplaced optimism. So we should not aim for that, but we need to define what is tolerable. That is the realism that Machiavelli puts into Stoicism. And so, like, take for instance voting system. That is the most basic responsibility that a citizen has, and that he can fulfill without being violent, without being extremist, without being anything. That is voting. And while voting, we ourselves are driven by factors like caste and religion and maybe even color, race. So even voting system, we as a voters are imperfect. And the reason, even though we can, by all means, we can say that we should not, vote on the basis of caste. We should not vote on the basis of religion. We should vote on the basis of progressive issues like education, healthcare, and employment. These things sound good, but in practice, that is not the thing. And now I'll tell you why that is not the thing. In my experience during policing, what I've seen, I've served in rural areas, I've served in cities. In fact, Rajkot is a very unique example. It lies in the Saurashtra region, and even though it's a city, largely a lot of the culture is still driven by traditional values like caste and religion. So that's a very interesting thing about Rajkot. What I've seen in case of, for instance, in case of caste, any sociology student will back me up that Emil Srinivas's theory of dual hierarchy of caste, where there is a ritual hierarchy. Ritual hierarchy is hierarchy in the traditional sense of Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. Whereas the another hierarchy is secular hierarchy, which is driven by things like education, money, and the position that you hold. And as people move up the secular hierarchy, they also make the ritual hierarchy irrelevant, and in turn move up the social hierarchy. And this is something which is clearly visible. People in the rural areas, they have not actually moved up the secular hierarchy. And that is the reason they stick to their ritual hierarchy so rigidly. And that is how their systems have evolved. That is how their systems are actually functioning. You see that they rely on their caste identities in order to get favors, in order to get jobs, in order to, put their point across, in order to organize. And this thing actually works for them. Secular hierarchy cannot work, and people cannot mobilize up the secular hierarchy until unless these basic things like education, healthcare, and employment opportunities are made more accessible to them. But this is the dilemma that we face. If these caste identities are actually functional for them, the secular identities are not. And in only way to destroy these parochial identities is to develop modern identity. And so we honestly we do have to work for ask for a government that delivers that. But then they will not जो अपना प्रचार करते हैं, the rallies that they carry out, they will still talk about caste and religious issues. So don't expect them to stop doing it anytime soon. They will not do it. It doesn't work for the voter. It doesn't work for the politician, majority of the voters. So we have to be smart. We have to be very selective about the battles that we are going to pick. So what happens on internet, especially on social media, that a politician says something that he's trying to please maybe a particular caste. So वो सब mob lynching चालू हो जाती है social media पे कि Then this guy is not right. This guy is he should not be voted for. All of that, but what they say and what they do are two different things, and we should focus more on what they do, and not on what they say. We should hold them accountable. We should point out their hypocrisies. We should that's our job. But while voting, while analyzing, we should be very careful about what they are saying, and to keep both things separate. What they are saying and what they are doing can be two different things at times. So, what can we do as a citizen? That's the first thing that I would like to. Uh, that's the thing that I would like to talk more and more about. First is educate. By education, I mean that we have to understand the nuances of governance, and we cannot be reliant on mainstream media every single time. We have to be independent thinking, and we have to judge whether the mainstream media is actually reflecting our needs, our causes, or actually being the voice of the voiceless. They can be at times become voice of the powerful, and it can be too loud at times. So one of the things. So understanding nuances, I mean, I'll take an instance. I'll take an example. There was a tweet where a supposedly liberal account was in favor of mob lynching. In fact, it was and murder of accused who recently got bailed in an rape case where the victim was a minor. So let me tell you a story and see if this story actually fits the bill or not. A 17-year-old girl was in relationship with a 19-year-old guy. They both know each other for last 2 years. They were both they both did their schooling in same school. And by the time the guy turned 19, he eh, got into a physical relationship with the girl. Now technically, this is a rape, and the girl is minor. And if the guy got bail, and if the father of the girl shot the guy because, let's say, the guy is Dalit and the girl is Darbar, Rajput. So that supposedly liberal thing where mob lynching or whatever this thing was being celebrated. Uh, I don't know. It doesn't make sense because this is what I'm talking about, the nuances of the thing. I can make a whole story sound so terrifying and so out of the norm, but actually that is the norm, and this is a problem with us. That the legal age of marriage is 18 years, and the age of consent is also 18 years for a girl, and that's where the problem begins. The family of the girl wants to get the girl child married as soon as possible after 18, and girls start sensing that in the age of 17. And so many cases we come across where the girl is of 17 years 10 months, 17 years 11 months, and the elopement happens, and it becomes a case of kidnapping. And by the time get back, the parents will pressurize her to give a statement where she will say, yes, we established physical relationship, and which is also true at times, and it becomes a case of rape. So such things happen. So I would like, as a citizen, for us to understand the nuances that is involved in governance, that is involved in policing, and not make an issue out of everything. So you'll ask how to select our issues, how to actually recognize what are the topics that we should be fighting on. And the real issues become where the state is clearly at fault. For instance, assume that there is genuinely a rape case where a girl actually died after the rape and because of physical injuries, and it is clear that there was some sort of assault, some sort of breach of law, and state did not register the case on time, state did not begin the investigation on time, state did not that is us, police did not include the relevant sections on time, and all of these facts basically are clear. Then you can say, yes, police did not do its job properly, and if it doesn't matter whether the judiciary gives the accused bail or not. That is completely entirely up to the facts of the matter. But uh, the relevant sections, the relevant procedure, if that is not what I'm trying to say is you need to be crystal clear about what the limitations of the state you are willing to put on them, and you need to educate yourself before raising your voice on any issues. And as far as possible, make it more generalized instead of specific. For instance, Hathras rape incident and Delhi rape incident, which happened on Nirbhaya Kand. Both of them are quite similar, though there are some differences in them. And in fact, the nature of allegations are also different. But what we should ask for is the state should be responsible, and registration of FIR should be responsible to include the relevant sections on time. It should be responsible for documentation, and it cannot give frivolous reasons to to acquit the accused. And it should not do is use fake FIRs or FIRs with malicious intent. Assume a high court of a particular state said that such and such FIR was done with a malicious intent, and the accused in the case had to stay in jail for 6 months, and the bail is granted because FIR holds no water, and clearly the whole FIR was nullified. What action will be taken against police? I being on this side of the fence, I wonder, because at best suspension, and what happens is if he was actually doing the bidding of state, it is quite possible that in next 2 3 months he will be posted back again on a very creamy post, maybe even with a promotion. So what was the point of agitating? What was the point of organizing yourself? And these things happen, and these things happen a lot. So you should basically start asking for a mechanism where we as a police officers can be held accountable, where such FIRs are being drafted, are being filed on such frivolous grounds, and not FIR being filed is a different thing, but also charge sheeted. That these charge Police is saying that these charges actually hold up against this person without any significant or material evidence. And if that is the case, why no action is being taken against us? And this is something that I wonder. So second is organize. You need to organize yourself. So there is social media where you can do it. There are streets where you can do it. In cases where you are not sure, where you want to get yourself educated and educate other people, social media is a good thing. That is where you should be. In case if you have doubt, in case if you believe that things are not black and white in my head, you should be on social media. You should use civil language. You should be impartial. You should not be selective about which parties are you criticizing or which parties are you not criticizing. You should ask the social media platforms. For instance, I've been asking Twitter to, in my own capacity, to you know mm, uh, to label misleading content and fake news. And fortunately, they started doing it in US election, and fortunately, they have started doing it just right now in India, finally. And same thing which happened in Facebook. Facebook was apparently, allegedly, was letting a few instances of fake news and misinformation propaganda slide by, whereas it was harsh on others. So it should be harsh on both. It should be harsh on both, and it should not be partial in favor of others. So if we ask for these things, if we ask for these things from the platforms, then only they are going to give us. We At the end of the day, they are here for users. They are here for the data of user, and they are here to serve advertisement to the user. And as long as we are letting them do it, all of these things, then only they will, uh, they will keep doing their thing. And if we tell them we are putting our foot down, you cannot do this, you cannot keep on doing this, then they have to bend. They ultimately, it's our will of the people. And let me assure you, even police cannot fight will of the people, even though we are the arm that uses force, that is supposed to use the legitimate use of force. But in case of huge number, in case of huge numbers and will of the masses, even we bend. So, which is a good thing, which is how things should be. And if things starts becoming otherwise, that's where the warning sign should be, that citizens are not being respected, that citizens, in case where there are so many people in huge numbers on the street, and yet the state is not willing to listen to them, but rather is willing to fight them. So that's not something that I think a citizen should respect. So third is agitate. Now, when I said that if you come out in mass numbers, police won't be able to resist you or will be able to fight you. I don't. So it should not be the norm. It should be an exception. You can't be out on street. Frankly, that's not possible. That's not the way. We fought. Even we did not fight for our struggles like that. Gandhiji was very aware of this ability of society to organize itself, and it cannot be frequent, it cannot be often. So we have to pick our battles very wisely, and while doing, in order to pick our battle wisely, we have to become wise, we have to become we have to be able to segregate an issue into black and white and see things clearly, whether this thing was acceptable to us or not. As a citizen, I can understand, as a citizen, you can understand the system is flawed, you can understand that the people running it are flawed, you can understand that maybe things did not happen perfectly. But in spite of that, why did the state not take any action? Why did the state overreach? Why did the judiciary or the police overreach? These are all the questions that you should ask. And if it's clear, like in case of Rwanda, Radio Rwanda was the thing, right? Radio Rwanda is used for the propaganda, for spreading the propaganda. And if you feel that such things are happening in the state, in that case, you should be out on the street. And there's nothing wrong in that. I'm not going to say that there's anything wrong in that. But you should be very careful about the causes you pick, about the, because if your causes are on shaky grounds, and if you cannot really hold your ground, uh, so state can easily use power to suppress you, because you won't be able to mobilize large number of people, and you won't have the dedication or the zeal, enthusiasm to carry it out as a sustained effort. It has to be a sustained effort. So you have to plan 2 to 3 months ahead, and for actually for the long haul, if you are planning to go against state, otherwise you cannot do it. So sorry. Hmm. So, uh, uh, another thing is, let's go back to Nazi Germany, where Jews were being persecuted, and we were. This was a question which was fielded to Gandhiji, that what you would have done, what you would have suggested Jews to do, in case if you were in their place and if you were their leaders. And it is a very interesting question, because clearly the state was using violence, was using force against illegitimate force against Jews. And what could they have done? Ideally, most people would say, fight back, use violence. And Gandhiji said, commit mass suicide. That's what he said. You may agree to disagree, you may do whatever you may have differences with him, and but this is the thing, that it is possible that state can use illegitimate force and can suppress certain sections of society. And is violence a justified thing for citizens to use? I would still say no, but yes, in case you in case if you believe such and such things are happening, and state can end up using its force on you, you should be there in huge numbers, so that state will be unable to do so. That's the checkmate kind of situation that citizens can put forward for a state, where state will not be able to use force. So these are the broad things that I wanted to cover up, and in case people have any questions, they are free to pose them. There you go.
Yeah. Let me begin by saying that it was very well organized talk. I liked how you sprinkled the talk with exactly the right amount of political philosophy. It was pleasant a surprise to hear a policeman talk of and trace the idea of security in Western political philosophy. Some of the anecdotes and illustrations you used were also an eye openers. Thank you for this enlightening lecture. We have learned so much from you today. There are a few questions that I'll ask and you can respond to. The first question is: how should a citizen react to the Hyderabad case or the Vikas Dubey
Sorry,
case where the police killed the rapist?
sorry, Ariba, can you repeat the question?
Sure. How should a citizen react to the Hyderabad case or the Vikas Dubey case where the police killed the rapist?
So, like I said, let's not go into specific. Let's talk about where the state was in custody of an accused, and the accused was killed in suspicious circumstances, we can say, or questionable circumstances. So, first of all, the nuances, like I said, the nuances of the things can be very fine, and we may not be aware of it, but we can never actually find out what actually happened. The people on the spot and the statements that we take at times can be very different. So you'll say, let's come. Some people will say, let's wait for a proper inquiry. Some will say, no, this is what happened and this is the way it should have happened. My take is that it's a clear failure of police. Police is responsible for handling the accused, and if the accused was able to take a gun from a policeman, and if he was able to run, and in the process, then somewhere actually the whole system, as per the official records, it may have been the fault of one person, but essentially that one, if I am here speaking on behalf of the state, or if I am on the street handling a law and order situation on the behalf of the state, my mistakes are a state's mistake, and it's okay to make mistakes. I'm not saying it's not okay to make mistakes, but it's far more important to correct them. And the question is, what was the mechanism that was put in place, and what was the sort of accountability that was held was asked for from the police department in both cases, and was even anyone even held accountable, or because both of those cases were sensational. They were not random cases. They were the cases where the eye of the nation were on the cases, and I believe the way Nirbhaya was handled, even the police was on the receiving end. I think they did a fantastic job in handling the whole thing and documenting the whole thing, in the speed in which they arrested the accused. And I don't believe the state was at fault there. The state may have been fault in preventing the thing, but when it came to investigation, post-incident things, I don't think I can find flaws with the fault with Nirbhaya investigation. But clearly, in case of Vikas Dubey and in Hyderabad case, police had a responsibility of the safety of accused, and until and unless they were proven guilty, they should not have been, the logical end of the case was not reached at. And I believe police, in case of Vikas Dubey, ended up hurting their own cause, because whatever be the reason for this incident, let's assume it was laxity of one person from whom Vikas Dubey was able to snatch the gun from. But the nexus, or that he represented a nexus. He was someone who was, evading the reach of justice for a while, and there was a possibility that it was happening because of a nexus of politicians, gangsters, and policemen. I'm not saying it was a thing. It was a possibility, and if we get such an opportunity, we should not let go of it. And to expose such a nexus, and the police should have done their job better. There is no question about it.
Thank you. Thank you for that honest answer. So the next question is, I think regarding to the farmers' protest, they are asking, what is the role of peaceful protest in a country where any protest is met with a violent reaction from the government?
So, peaceful protests are the way to, put the focus of the nation's attention on a particular issue, and peaceful state can use violence on any pretext or maybe for any legitimate reason. Let's say uh, some people were engaging in violence with the police. In the response, they also used violence, and even people are even police consist of people who can, get emotional or get angered or frustrated. Trust me, matlab, half hour on KKV circle in Rajkot and I'll lose my mind. That is the thing. And I understand what the traffic men over there are, facing. Uh, all of that. But there can be a case where state is using force, you know, which is not justified. Regardless of that, as far as possible, we should not engage in violence. Gandhiji never did, and he was right about that because the moment you start using violence, the legitimacy of the cause gets eroded, and people will can be divided on the basis of that. Some people would like to stay away from it. Some people would like to condemn it. So instead of getting divided because we lost our patience or we got anger, violence is not going to solve anything. Violence with police isn't going to solve anything. And so it should not be initiated by us. And if police is doing it again and again, and like I said, that becomes a question where which Jews have to face what to do, whether to commit suicide or fight the state. And both can be justified. Many people are fan of Gandhiji, many people are fan of Bhagat Singh. That's up to them. Not I'm no one to choose for them in such a case.
Okay, what about the reaction from the opposite end? Like, what is the violence from the police? When is it justified? When police, are violent towards the citizens.
So when we believe that we do, it has never been the case that police has not used force. They had to use. At times they have to use force. Suppose so in case of migrant issue, what happened in Rajkot? It happened before I got transferred here, but what happened? What the things that I have heard is that migrants were supposed to depart for MP, Bihar, and Jharkhand, and the timing somehow got changed and by the railway department at the last moment. The train which was supposed to leave in evening started to leave in morning, and the people who were supposed to be there were not there, and the train which was supposed to leave in morning, the people who of the state, suppose Bengal, the morning train was for Bengali people are there, but their train will leave in evening, whereas Bihari people, their train was leaving in morning, but the Bihari people were not there. People on the both side got angered, and they first of all, started asking questions to the police, because first of all, it was not our job to, uh, you know, uh, the scheduling was not our job. The transporting of migrants from one place to another was not our job. Our job was to make sure that the crowd remains in discipline. And the moment they lost discipline, that is one instance where I can think police was right to use force.
Okay, thank you, sir. The next question is, how relevant is the archaic CRPC in the 21st century? Do we need a new code to be put in place?
Definitely, I believe that should be the case, because you can see that connections are not happening. You can see it's not a police. Let me make one thing very clear to you. In 99% of the cases, the police do a wonderful job, and they try to, in case of investigation of serious cases, uh, we uh, we do tend to collect each and every single evidence that we can. But what happens is that the lacunas in CRPC, and they can be used to circumvent the judicial system and the justice. So statements which are taken under, say, 161, they do not really hold any evidentiary value. And I say there are good reasons for that. But what happens is, in case of Panchnama, we are supposed to have punch witnesses. What is happening is people do not want to come forward. They do not want to get into this business with police. They do not want to get caught up in the judicial system. So they refuse to most of the time they refuse to give Panchnama. And the people, those who do, they will assume that I'm a punch witness to something, a crime scene, and the way that whole crime scene is recorded, that is very important or very crucial piece of evidence to prove the whole incident in court. And the witness, which was the witness of which was on from the part of citizen, he basically turns back on his statement or refused to acknowledge that he was the punch in that case. The whole case will fall apart, and it's very easy to uh, compromise the process of justice. So that is, those things are very legitimate concern, and yes, they should be looked into and reconsidered. And these things are quite archaic. And in fact, in case of cyber crimes, I am handling cyber crime division. So one of the most common things I face is that crime happened in Gujarat and the accused is in Bihar and Bengal, Jharkhand. And in case of Corona, it's very hard for our teams to go there and actually live there. So and get the accused. These are the problems that we are facing. If there can be a proper mechanism where the responsibility of arrest can be shifted on paper on to Bengal or Bihar police in this particular example, then the system can be more efficient.
Okay. So the next question is, sir, how can and how does the police try to tackle their image in public? There is a lot of fear attached to police from the side of the citizen. So how does the police navigate this fear when there should be a sense of security?
Okay, so this is something that I myself am handling. I'm also handling the social media account of Rajkot City Police, and I also tend to listen to applicants who come to me. So one thing, the most basic thing that we can do is lend an ear to them whenever they approach a senior officer. I think the senior officer should, give them a patient hearing and a empathetic hearing, and that's the first thing that they can do. Second is they can highlight the good things that they do. And we, for instance, right now there is night curfew going on in Rajkot, and we are also helping a lot of people who are coming from outside district, who are coming from rural area, who are not aware of the timings of night curfew, and they get stuck up at the border of Rajkot city. So we have also made some arrangements to bring them to get them to their destination. So all these sort of good deeds that we are doing, the good detections that we are doing, we need to highlight them more. We need to basically we need to communicate them with them more, and we need to be more sensitive. Training is one thing that usually people say that training of ground level staff can be done and it should be done. I'm not saying, but one also has to understand that the ground level staff that is being recruited, like I said, he is being recruited from a let's assume rural area, which is not and his education background is not that solid. So do we really expect him to let go of his primordial identities because of a 1 week training sessions? I don't think so. I mean, I would like to think that it can happen, but I have not seen it happen.
Sir, I like how honest you are in all your answers. So the next question is, what better cyber laws do we need to control the negative effects of social media? And are the current laws in place enough, or do they need to be improved? There is scope for
Uh,
improvement.
there is scope for improvement. Definitely, there is scope for improvement. First of all, I think the platform should start to regulate themselves, and we should instead of going after each and every individual who is posting fake news. Let's assume using Twitter, we should go after Twitter, and we should enforce that responsibility on Twitter. That it's your responsibility when a verified handle is posting a manipulated media or posting a fake news, and there should be a limited number of fair chances that should be given to him. And if he fails to keep that responsibility, kya naam hai uska, his verification should be taken away, and his tweet should be uh, limited or restricted. That sort of thing should happen. So we should, instead of asking the state to go after each and every individual, we should ask the state to go after the platforms who are not actually doing their job right. So, I mean, why did it take so much time for Twitter to start highlighting fake news and manipulated media on verified Twitter handles? In case of India, when it was doing so in US for far long time. So that's one of the things that we should take care. Second is, like I said, that the in case of cybercrime, what happens is the crime happens in, or at least the victim is in one jurisdiction or one state, and the accused is in some entirely other state. That if we are able to do proper documentation, and if police of one state is able to prove that the victim, the accused, is living in a different state, the onus of responsibility of arrest and apprehending the accused should shift on that state. And that is how the performance should be measured. Cyber crimes is one thing that I believe the structural improvements, the scope of the structural improvements is huge.
Thank you, sir. The last question is by Narendra Jarwal. He wants to know, I think it's more of a general, because he wants to know, do you think the police department is understaffed and under-equipped, and that they are also paid less than they should be as compared to the plethora of duties they perform on a day-to-day basis, which comes at a cost of their personal life and even festivals and family occasions?
I do believe that's true. With the amount of work that we do, for instance, like I said, night curfew is going on. This is fortunately I took permission to, and there's a reason I'm not in uniform, because I said I will be giving this lecture as a citizen. So I'm at home, I'm not in uniform. Otherwise, I would have been in office by now. And I usually come back home at 8 o'clock, and by 9:30, 10, I have to go back again to see how the curfew is being implemented. So my family get 2 hours with me, and out of that, most of it is, uh, for menial things like having lunch, having dinner, and getting ready, having breakfast. So yeah, that is, and the ground level staff is actually far more overstressed and overworked than I am. I am.
Sir, sir, you're muted yourself. Sir, mute. You muted yourself.
No, sorry, call आ रहा था. हाँ, sorry.
Okay.
So, hmm, uh, where was I? I sit in an AC office, and most of my work is related to thinking and actually seeing how the things are being done, how whether the proper procedure is being followed in an investigation, whether the traffic problem is handled properly or not, where I can shift the parking area, and all of those things. Those are more thinking related job. On field, it's dealing with people. Like I said, half an hour on a heavy traffic point, and your mind will, it will be very close to exploding, because people will not listen to it. All of those things. Plus, on festivals, we are not able to celebrate it with our family. होली एक दिन बाद मनाएंगे, दिवाली पे एक दिन बाद मनाएंगे, ऐसे ही. So yes, these things are true. Even I will also say that we are underpaid, and the kind of job that I'm doing here, I'll easily get double or triple in private sector. So that discrepancy is sometimes you feel that discrepancy is there.
So even though you are a citizen today, we would like to salute you as a policeman for all the hard work that you put in. We just got a new question from Mr. Matam. He wants to know, the state is assumed as something to protect the rights of people. This way, maybe due to mass national movements against the British, and the state was the result. Oh my God, it's a big question. It's more of a comment. But it was mostly against the aspirations of people. Should we embrace the history of a people who escaped the state or empires by suicide or escaping to forests?
No. I think the fundamental premise of the question is wrong, because he's assuming that British was a state. Yes, it was a state. It was, but the social contract was not that of a democracy. That citizens. We were not citizens. We were subjects. British were states. We were subjects. We were being ruled. They were the rulers. That's not the case here. We are the rulers. We are the rulers, and sorry. good cause are involved. We are the rulers. So the social contract that we have with our state is different in a democracy, and that in case of British had no responsibility to uphold our rights or hold themselves accountable. Whatever they did out of benevolence, and we had basically no way to enforce it. उन्होंने 1909, 1919, 1935, they did give us few powers and few rights, if you can call them that. But again, we basically fought for them. They were not given, or and that is a problem. After 60, 70 years of independence, we tend to forget that that citizenship as an identity was hard earned, and it was fought for, and it's not a given. It's something that we snatch from rulers. And if state ends up becoming ruler, so you will have to fight back to remind them that they are state, they are not rulers.
Exactly, sir. I think until and unless we read history and we are in, okay, there's another question that is coming. So I was just saying that, until and unless we are aware of our own past and how we have had such a long journey, we will not be able to appreciate that we are citizens now and not, subjects. I think that was a very valid point. The next question, let me just see, sir, in the chats. We have a new question. Here, can't we safely assume we too have rulers too and think beyond social contract? We always resisted state even if it is masquerading as democracy. Okay.
So
He's just
that that is true. Masquerading as democracy. The state, let me assure you, state will make mistakes. The state is an organization that is made up of organisms, and organisms make mistake. And as long as they make mistakes, states will also make mistake. So in one way or another, state will always be ruler, and they will be masquerading as state. But you know what, sometimes it can become blatant. It can be so obvious that the mask is off. The mask is important, that that pretense. Like I said, when the spotlight in the cases of Hyderabad encounter and Vikas Dubey encounter, the spotlight was on them. The whole nation was watching. Cars were literally, the media was literally following them. Even then, such a thing happened. So you know, when such things are happening, you can wonder if the mask is off or not. So I don't really blame it, some people. But if the frequency of such incidences increases, in that case, a citizen can wonder whether the mask is off or not, and you would like to remind them, at least, yeah, pretend to go वाली चीज़ है.
okay. Thank you, sir. If you would like to share some your experience of being on a forum, when
Yes, thank you for having me here, Alka, and it was wonderful to have to have myself here to express my thoughts and to give the voice of a citizen, which I said I rarely can speak as. So, and the kind of questions that I got here were difficult, and they were difficult to answer. And I hope that they were well within the defined restrict limitations that state has put on me. And it was nice to interact with such a audience. I don't know the numbers. I did not go into it, but definitely the questions were well thought, and they were well intentioned. So I'm glad to feel those questions.
so it's our pleasure that you have agreed to come on a forum. That it was a very enlightening lecture. I think the question answer rounds also brought how honest you are as a citizen when you are you're not wearing your uniform. It was a pleasant to interact with you. I would now request Zeba Tamkanat Mazam to please give the vote of thanks. Over to you, Zeba. I think there seems to be some problem.
Not an issue, Ariba. Uh, even I have to
Okay,
leave.
let me
I will
thank
be
you once
getting
again
call.
for joining.
Yeah, Thank you, Arika.
Sure, sure. So please, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Thank you, participants, for joining us today. Have a great day ahead and see you all this Saturday for Dr. Aparna Devre's talk on theorizing from non-Western perspective. Thank you and bye-bye. Have a nice day.
Bye.